Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Deborah Fox, and I'm the director of Pegasus Early Music in Rochester, New York, and NYS Baroque, located in Ithaca and Syracuse, New York. And these two arts organizations, which are involved in early music, have been collaborating on concerts for quite a few years now. And especially during this year, we've put an online season up. So welcome to the beginning of our spring 2021 online season. We're really excited to start this series of concerts with a special program by our Pegasus Rising and NYS Baroque Young Artists program. These two programs are to encourage and mentor young emerging musicians who are interested and who are committed to early music. So it's a little bit of a training program. They apply to us, they submit a program proposal, and of course an audition tape or video. We are in 2021 after all. Then we help them through the process of putting together a concert, finding a venue, or making a tape, whatever help that they need. For some of these ensembles, it's the first professional fee that they receive. And when we're doing live concerts, the concerts are always free and always in some kind of venue that's a little bit out of the way, a little bit not your standard venue. We've had concerts in coffee houses and a bar at happy hour, small chapels out of the way, places like that. So I'm really always happy to encourage these young artists and to get them out there to the world, because they're all really great and full of energy and full of lots of ideas. So those are our two programs, Pegasus Rising and NYS Baroque Young Artists. People have asked about today's concert, what does fiddling have to do with early music? And I think you'll find that today's concert makes a really great connection between these two genres. There are a lot of similarities, there are also a lot of differences, and we'll talk about them as we go. But these young artists today have really done the work. In early music, we do a lot of research into manuscripts and contexts of pieces, and they've actually done the research as well about fiddling. And we're going to hear a lot about different styles, and we'll hear a lot of different styles as well. So let's have a chat with them and bring them on, please. I'd like to introduce the members, the violinist members of the Berwick Fiddle Consort. On your screen, please welcome Lydia Becker, whom many of you know from Pegasus and NYS Baroque, Sarah Douglas, and Julia Connor. So welcome. So first of all, how about if you just tell us where you're located, where you're broadcasting from right now, and what you're doing these days. So let's go from the top. Lydia?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lydia, and I currently live here in Rochester, New York. I am pursuing a double master's at the Easton School of Music in violin performance and early music.
My name's Sarah. I'm from Canada, which is where I am right now. I got my master's last year from McGill University in Montreal. And I'm also sort of living in upstate New York in Saranac Lake in the Adirondacks.
Hi everyone, I'm Julia. I'm calling from the Massachusetts woods near Amherst. I am a freelance violinist, and I also teach in Boston, and I play in a group that composes and performs our own music that does very different things than BFC.
Great. So tell us a little bit about the Berwick Fiddle Consort. When did you begin? How did you come together as fiddlers rather than Baroque violinists? And how do you keep it going?
So we first met in the summer of 2018. When we all attended Berwick Academy as part of the Oregon Bach Festival. So it's an educational program for historical performance. We were coming to play Baroque and classical music, and we soon discovered that we all also shared an interest in fiddling. So we met together every night to teach each other fiddle tunes that we had learned, and little by little, everyone in the academy started joining us. So these became pretty lengthy sections, usually lasted about 2 hours every night. And some of the professors heard us playing together, and they thought it was so great, they told us that we should play on the first chamber music concert. So we did at the end of the first week. And then the next week, we had a pretty bonding experience. And to keep the story short, basically, we were all going to see the ocean, and my van broke down, and the people that were stranded while the tow truck came to pick up my van were everyone that you see here. And so while we were waiting for the tow truck to come, we started brainstorming, and we realized that BFC, which was originally the Berwick Fiddle Club, could become something more. And so we rebranded ourselves. We called ourselves the Berwick Fiddle Consort. And we actually performed our second concert at the end of the second week on the chamber music concert once again. And just since then, we've been keeping in contact and been performing.
Great.
I'd like to just shout out to anyone who may be listening who was there with us at Berwick 18. I know Adrian Murillo is tuned in, and maybe, I don't know if other people are as well, but if you are, write to us in the chat. We still think about that time all the time.
Oh, so there you were at a Baroque music camp, and it sort of became fiddle camp as well. So this is a good time then to start to explore the connection between early music, Baroque violin playing, and fiddling. It's maybe we think of it as folk tradition versus historical performance, but maybe it's not quite that simple. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I can say a couple of things, and feel free to jump in, Lydia and Sarah, if you want to add anything. The main connection that I see between historical performance and fiddling is the connection to dance music. So most, if not all, fiddle music today has a very active dance component. I specialize in music from East Clare in Ireland, and all of that music is meant to be danced to. And if you look back to Baroque music, you'll see that a lot of the music comes from dance forms as well. So they really kind of diverged from the same tree. So they're cousins, really.
There's a lot of also technical aspects of playing the Baroque violin that are similar to playing fiddle, such as the importance of the bow as opposed to left hand virtuosity. You don't really vibrate or shift that much in either Baroque music or fiddling, but the down and up strokes and how you use those and the pattern of those is very important, and that's what drives the music.
Mm-hmm. And what I thought about the last time I heard this concert was the use of ornaments and
yeah, we had a little
complicated little things.
How many of the ornaments are similar in Baroque and folk, even though they won't use the same names.
Mm-hmm. And is there a research component as well? I mean, you talk about during the concert, I know that you do talk about where and when these tunes were from. And how do we know all that?
So I would say for my own research into Irish music, there's definitely a research component, although it's a little more hands-on than going to a library, which I love because I'm a very hands-on learner. But East Clare music is an oral tradition, so the research component really consists of going to Ireland and learning the tunes by ear. So there's not a lot of historical record of these, so learning them by ear is the way to do the research. And you can be pretty sure that they've been passed down for hundreds of years, because you have lineages of teachers and musicians who pass the songs down from teacher to student for generations.
And it's
So
interesting.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
No, you go ahead.
I was just say, I think another aspect is just the geographical nature of these tunes, like in Baroque music. So Julie was talking about Irish East Clare music. For Scottish music, the story is pretty different, and we'll be talking about that during the concert. Many more publications, so we actually have more primary sources in a sense, where we can see what composers actually wrote down in order to describe kind of the fiddle tunes that were being played at the time.
Yep. There's huge, not only published music, but there's huge manuscript collections also that are in libraries in Edinburgh mostly.
And we'll hear in the Geminiani how these two come together. It's very, very interesting, and such wonderful tunes as well. So let's get to the concert then. I would like to encourage our audience, if you have questions or comments during the concert, to write them in the YouTube chat, and we will keep an eye out. And after the concert, we'll have a little more chat amongst ourselves, and I'll read the questions from the chat. So please feel welcome to join on in. So without further ado, then, I'm really happy and excited to present the Berwick Fiddle Consort, playing their concert called Ayont Yon Glen. Enjoy.
The first set that we are going to play features a set of long variations over a ground bass. Ground basses were extremely popular all over Europe and had been for the last several hundred years. And they actually became extremely popular in Scotland during the 18th century. So a ground bass is a short bass line that is repeated over and over with a treble instrument or voice improvising or playing variations over this repeating bass line. And so this was a way that composers and performers could really show off their virtuosity. And for Scottish fiddlers, this was not an exception. So these sets of long variations would often feature common ground basses, but played in a more Scottish folk style. And so this is what you're going to hear. We actually have remnants of these variations composed by John McLaughlin and William McGibbon, featuring the ground bass called the passamezzo, both antico and moderno, so two different variations of this ground bass. And you'll probably recognize the first tune. So we hope you enjoy.
everyone, I'll be performing a set of tunes from Cape Breton Island in Nova Scotia, Canada. There are 6 tunes in this set. First is a march with 3 variations, and then our 2 strathspeys, and finishing with 3 reels. So the names of the tunes in order are Johnny Cope, Marquis of Huntly, Braes of Tulimet, Paresis, Lord Macdonald's Reel, and West Maba Reel.
The Scots drawing room style developed after the Act of Union between Scotland and England in 1707. This unification meant that Scotland lost its separate parliament, and Edinburgh was transformed from a capital city to a sort of small provincial city. And this was, of course, a great blow to Scottish morale. So some composers and also writers in Scotland tried to compensate for this by promoting Scotland's culture instead of its political power. So a lot of Scottish composers started writing arrangements of Scots tunes in a more kind of continental European style, and the idea was to be able to publish these collections in London and other big cities to show that Scotland was just as good as any other country when it came to writing music. Francesco Geminiani was not Scottish, but he jumped on the bandwagon in 1749 when he published his Treatise of Good Taste in the Art of Music, which includes some Scotch airs made into sonatas. That's what he calls it. So they're Scots tunes that he has set for trio sonata. So in our arrangement, Lydia is going to be playing the continuo part on the viola. Now, because Geminiani's arrangement is so complex and sounds thoroughly European, we decided to preface it with a version of the same tune. So we're going to play the third sonata, which is called The Last Time I Came Over the Moor. And this tune also appears in Nathaniel Gow's collection, Vocal Melodies of Scotland. So first we're going to play the version that's found in that collection, and then we're going to play Geminiani's arrangement.
Next, I'll be playing two sets for you from East Clare in Ireland, which is an area of the world whose music I've come to know and love over the past few years. Because of its relative geographic isolation, Clare in general and East Clare in particular has one of the oldest regional styles of traditional music in Ireland. East Clare music tends to be slower than other Irish music you may have heard, and many of the tunes are in unusual keys, such as B flat or E flat, due to the prevalence of the concertina. As such, the playing of many East Clare musicians has a deep, mournful quality, which is often described as the lonesome touch. Both of my sets today are of tunes I learned in Ireland. The first is a set of jigs, one with the interesting title of I Buried My Wife and Danced on Her Grave, and followed by The Rooms of Dua. The second set is McGreevy's favorite, Miss McGuinness and the Sweetheart Wheel, which is often played as the last set of a session. This set, as well as The Rooms of Dua, was also recorded by Mary McNamara, a prominent East Clare musician who plays concertina, who has devoted her career to passing on the East Clare musician style to students both in East Clare and around the world. I hope you enjoy.
The next set that we're going to play features 2 strathspeys and 2 reels from Cape Breton, which is an island just off the coast of eastern Canada. At the end of the 18th century, the Highland clearances in Scotland basically evicted all of the Highlanders from the Highlands in Scotland. And so, as a result of this, approximately 30,000 Scots moved to Cape Breton. Incidentally, these Highlanders were also the fiddlers in Scotland, so they brought their folk music with them. So the Cape Breton style today kind of epitomizes this older Scottish folk style. 1, 2, 3, and...
Our last set is a throwback to our very first concert, which we performed as part of the Boston Early Music Festival Fringe way back in June of 2019. We'll be playing 3 tunes from Neil Gow's Repository, Roby Dunagorach, Stumpy Strathspey, and the Ranting Highland Band, and we'll conclude with a version of the Irish and Shetland reel, The Lass That Made the Bed for Me. Thank you so much for tuning in to our concert, and we hope you enjoy our last set.
And thank you to the Berwick Fiddle Consort for such an amazing, energetic, and refreshing concert. Thank you, really wonderful. A lot of great comments in the chat as well. And just a reminder to our audience, if you have any more questions or comments, please do put them in the chat. We're about to bring them back for some more interview. Thank you, our audience, for being here. I've noticed in the chat you're from all over the place. Canada, several different states, here in the United States, and Europe and Niger as well. So we're really excited to have a worldwide audience for today's concert. I'd also like to remind you that all of our concerts this year during the pandemic that are online are free to the public. And we're thrilled because it enables us to have a worldwide audience. And at the same time, we are still paying our artists their professional fees. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there. So if you are able and willing to support us with a donation, we have our two websites up there on the screen now, and we are very grateful for every donation, large or small. You really truly help us to keep going during this year of the pandemic and to keep the music coming. So thank you very much. Okay, let's bring on our violinists again and chat a little bit more. And again, please feel free to enter any comments and questions into the YouTube chat, and I'll try to pick them up along the way. Thank you. Well, bravo, bravi, Lydia and Sarah and Julia. Thanks for coming back. Can you unmute yourselves and we'll have a little chat. So I have a question that perhaps the answer is really obvious, but it wasn't to me the first time I saw your concert. In Baroque music, very often the violins will stand for a trio sonata or even an orchestra. But I've noticed in fiddling music from a lot of places, you're sitting. And why is that?
Well, I think the main reason is so that we can tap our feet. You weren't able to see our feet in those videos, but they're definitely tapping actively along with the rhythm, and it helps us keep the beat and really get the feel of the music.
I think our audience was also tapping toes as well. It's really toe tapping music. So yeah, that seems very obvious, but I hadn't thought about that before. So good. So I'm curious about these arrangements, or I don't even know if they are arrangements when the three of you are playing together. Does that originate as an ensemble piece, or does it originate as a tune that you either learned orally or from a manuscript? And then how do you make it into a three-part version, or is that an original version?
Well, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
You can say it. You can say it.
I was just going to say, I can talk for some of the Scottish things that we did.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of publications, as we talked about during the concert, and so those often have the melody and the bass line. And then also for the Geminiani, there were already 3 parts existing, so that was very convenient for us. But I can let Sarah and Julia talk a little bit more about the orally learned tunes that we've done.
Yeah, but even when we have the part with the melody and the bass line, we still do an arrangement. So we will decide, like, okay, in this part there's going to be 2 people on the melody and 1 person on the bass, and then in this one person's going to play chords and the other person plays the bass. So we do some arranging even with the printed stuff. And with the oral stuff, well, for the Cape Breton set, there are some bass lines that exist for those tunes, which Lydia learned by ear on the viola. So those were sort of pre-existing, but we didn't learn the tunes from a piece of paper.
And for the East Clare music, most of those sets are traditional sets, or actually all the sets I did are traditional sets. And that means that those are tunes that are almost always played together. So if I'm doing sort of a non-historical performance of East Clare music, I will put together my own sets where I find tunes that I like how they sound. But for this, I do research tunes that are traditionally played together. And the other thing that I think it's important to say in East Clare anyway, you always put the same kind of tune with another tune of the same type. So you put a jig with a jig, reel with a reel, hornpipe, hornpipe. That doesn't always happen as much in Cape Breton, but in East Clare and in most of Ireland, because they are dance sets, you don't want to be going from a reel to a jig because it changes from 4 to 3 and the dancers will trip and get mad at you. So you have to stick with the same time signature.
Sometimes the transitions, though, between pieces feel really complicated. And it, not that you're making it sound complicated, of course, but it takes a moment to figure out, okay, now we're in a different piece and there's a slightly different tempo or time signature or certainly rhythmic theme throughout it. And that's, I think, what's so fascinating about putting a set together like that. Yeah. And as far as making arrangements of things, it's kind of what you're doing is really like writing continuo parts. It's what I, as a lute player, do all the time. So yeah, it's very interesting. So in other words, some of these pieces could just be played as solos, but you've added other textures to them.
In fact, I think that for both Cape Breton and East Clare and some of the other stuff too, if you go to like a traditional fiddling, like not Baroque violin concert or a dance, it would just usually be the solo line. It'd just be one violin playing, and the accompaniment, it could be by itself, or it could have a piano or a guitar or an accordion or other things. But what we do when we sort of create a counterpoint line, like a second violin line to it, that's not really that common in any fiddle tradition that I know. So that's kind of something that we do because we like to and we think it sounds good, and it can add a lot of variety if we're playing like in sort of the composition that we create with the tune set. So there's with 3 violins or 4 violins when Anna's here, it's pretty flexible. You can get a lot of different textures depending on how many lines you want to put, and you want to have one person doing pits or an octave above, or there's a lot of options.
Yeah, it was nice to have the lutes in there on a couple of those sets to sort of add a little bit of pluck and strum and harmonic filling out. But gosh, I'd love to hear the 4 violins all together. So maybe next year. Okay, good. So we've been talking a little bit about early music playing because you're all Baroque violinists and fiddle playing. So tell me, how do these 2 styles inform each other when you play this music? Do you think about fiddling, for example, when you were playing the Geminiani, or do you think about Baroque technique or something when you're playing a solo?
For myself, I would say that my fiddle playing has definitely informed my ornamentation in Baroque music, and also my general improvisation, because I'm also a modern violinist. And I think learning by ear and being able to ornament by ear is an incredible tool, and it really helps me when I'm ornamenting a song that I've only learned by ear, that I've never seen the sheet music before. It gives me a sense of the tune that I wouldn't get if I learned it with music, with sheet music. And it helps me when I'm creating variations, when I'm creating ornaments and other music in a way that I wasn't able to do before I started to play fiddle.
I think that's true. A piece of paper in the way sometimes is in the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Lydia?
Yeah, I think also just thinking about the national styles in Baroque music with Italian and French music specifically. and thinking about how we need to be flexible in terms of the way we approach even ornamentation, sound production is very similar to the flexibility required for the national styles of fiddling, basically. So even things like different bow holds, I don't know if you noticed, Sarah was holding her bow in a very different way for the Cape Breton set, because you can get a variety of different kinds of bow articulations that you can't get with how we usually hold the bow in Baroque music. So just developing that flexibility of technique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sarah, anything to add?
Yeah, I guess so many of the technical, like sort of the basic technical things are similar. That I also find that doing fiddling has helped me in my general playing. And sometimes it's funny now, sometimes when I look at pieces that are not specifically Scottish, that like doesn't say this is based on a Scots air or something, you can still recognize certain types of rhythms and melodies that you think, oh, this might, like whoever wrote this might have listened to fiddle music. And you can recognize that. Sometimes my friends that know that I'm in this group will send pieces and be like, is this a Scottish piece because it has this and and you don't know for sure, but it just it's interesting to make connections that you wouldn't make if you didn't look at both styles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that are similar and a number of things that cross over. For me, there's a wonderful lilt of Inegal in there. But also you play in such a beautifully relaxed way when you're playing this music. So, gosh, I'd love to hear you all play some Corelli or something as well. So as a follow-up, we have a question from Walter. Do you think that folk music of this or any style ought to be part of the standard school or university music curriculum, just for those reasons? That's an interesting idea. Any comments on that?
So I actually don't. And the reason I think that is because this music is so much about the history and so much about the geography and where you learn it. And I think that I think it's really important to learn it in the environment where it exists. And I think it would be really, really great to have university courses where maybe you learn some tunes or maybe you learn the history. But I think to really get into the music, it's important to be able to actually understand the full history and of where it comes from. However, I don't know if Lydia and Sarah disagree. So,
well, I was thinking maybe we could have like an exchange course, like you'd go to Ireland for a semester and you would learn Irish music. That would be pretty cool.
BFC University.
I think that I think that if there's one important aspect of this music that we might want to integrate into the curriculum, especially early music curriculum, it's definitely like learning stuff by ear, especially ornaments, and improvising, because people do that all the time in the Baroque, and they do that in fiddling. And that would be, there's more and more schools that are having courses or even programs in that. But I think, yeah, just playing and learning without the sheet music would be a great skill to sort of learn more in schools.
Yeah, I think that that's something that's been lost in modern musical pedagogy and playing, and just starting to come back maybe in the last 10 or 15 or 20 years with the resurgence of interest in early music and historical performance. So.
Yeah, and if I might add to what Julie was saying, I think there's also a really interesting aspect of how the performers are engaging with their audience in these different settings. So in a university academic setting, when the performer's on the stage, the audience is clearly in the dark hall. There's a very different kind of engagement as opposed to playing in a pub. And I think having that experience also really informs the approach to that music.
Yeah, that's part of the reason that we like our Pegasus Rising and NYS Baroque young artists to play in unusual venues, is because it does make that the line between audience and performer much more flexible, and the whole experience a lot less formal. I mean, remember Beethoven used to play in beer halls. And in fact, we had a Beethoven Pegasus Rising concert in a beer hall once, and it was noisy, but you know, it was great. So terrific. We did have a question. If any of you, if you have an album out, or how people can hear more of the Berwick Fiddle Consort.
We do not currently have an album, but we have talked about recording an album, and we would like to as soon as we can. If you want to hear more of our music, we also have a Patreon page where for a small monthly donation, we have blog posts and videos, and sometimes I post vegan recipes, and Lydia has watercolors, and so that's a possibility. And we also have a YouTube channel where we post videos.
Great. Okay, so, and I think there are some links in the chat to this, and we will also post them when we post this concert. And the concert will be up on the Pegasus Early Music and the NYS Baroque YouTube channels, probably starting sometime this week with one of the interviews from the Friday or the Sunday concert. So you can come back and listen as often as you want. And I think people are going to be doing that, in fact. Great. Just checking to see if there are any more questions coming in. Okay. Thank you very much, Lydia and Sarah and Julia, and of course to Antoine and Sebastian, our lute players. Sebastian was our elf on the shelf lute player, and Antoine was the lute player from the Boston Early Music Festival set. Thank you to Antoine also for doing the video editing for the concert. And as always, to the fabulous and always cool Walter Freeman for doing the technicals for today's concert, behind the scenes. I'd like to tell you about our next concert coming up. This is in just a couple of weeks, and it's something totally different, but it's still about historical performance practice. Our friends Daniel Yaden and Neil Perez da Costa from Sydney, Australia, are providing us with a concert of Brahms and Schumann, played on period instruments, a beautiful period piano and a cello, old cello as well. And they've been doing extensive research on 19th century performance practice. And there are some surprising things that you're going to hear them talk about there. So really looking forward to this. It's kind of a secret among a lot of early musicians who, like myself, specialize in the 17th century, that we love Brahms. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I think you'll enjoy meeting Neil and Danny as well. So please do join us for that. You can sign up on our website to be notified of the link, or just show up on the day and find the link on our website. So thank you very much for coming today. Please stay safe and healthy, and enjoy lots of music in the meantime. Thank you, and bye-bye.